I'm very briefly going to introduce how this exhibition came to Dulwich Picture Gallery before handing over to my brilliant colleague, Dr. Monika Hinkel. Many of you, this is it. If you haven't seen it, why not? Please come. Please come soon. Many of you will know us already. This is us, Dulwich Picture Gallery in South London. We are the world's first purpose-built public art gallery. Now, many people might question why a gallery, which is primarily known for its European masters, is hosting an exhibition of 20th century giant paintings. Well, let me tell you, it relates to our mission to be a public art gallery, an art gallery for everyone. This was very important to our founders, and when we were founded, we were one of the very few public art galleries that you could visit. We are 14 years older than the National Gallery, which is celebrating its bicentennial this year, so we win that one just. But we were also a very valuable and vital resource for practicing artists, because if you were an artist and you wanted to see the works of the great masters, where could you go? There are very few collections open to you. Dulwich Picture Gallery was one of those few collections. And consequently, since we opened, we have been host to a number of very important artists, all of which, as the Minister highlighted, came, they wrote in our visitor books, they signed their names, and in those visitor books we have signatures by the likes of Claude Monet, Vincent van Gogh, Vanessa Bell, and of course, the star of the show, Hiroshi Yoshida. Hiroshi Yoshida came to Dulwich Picture Gallery on the 29th of May, 1900. This signature actually records his third attempt to visit the gallery. He actually tried to visit Dulwich Picture Gallery on 2 attempts previously. The first time, he got to Victoria Station and was told by a police officer that Dulwich Picture Gallery did not exist. Nevertheless, he persisted. He came back again on the second time, and unfortunately the trains were down due to fog. Welcome to London. But the third time he came, he finally made it, and he recorded his signature in the visitor book. We were so impressed by his efforts that we decided to reward him with an exhibition over 100 years later. So he recorded his signature in the visitor book, and this was really the starting point for this exhibition. A very tangible link to an artist of the past who had this incredible legacy within his family, men and women, all printmakers, and really showcasing Japanese art across over 100 years. And for me, one of the most special moments of producing this exhibition was when the current, and she would say the final generation of the Yoshida family, Ione Yoshida, came to the gallery to talk with Monika and I about her contribution to the exhibition, which Monika will show you later. And she came to talk with us, and she opened, we told her about the signature, she opened the visitor book, and she was visibly very moved by the signature. She had never known her grandfather. He had died before she was born, and yet she was following in his footsteps through this very tangible link to the past. And for us at Dulwich Picture Gallery, we don't want art to be remote. We want to bring that human story, that human element, and that story of family, which is so important to this exhibition. I will now hand over to Monika. I also want to take this moment to thank Monika for her brilliant scholarship, because she has put such love and passion for this art into this exhibition, and it's visible in every work, in every label. So thank you, Monika. I would like to hand over to you now.
Well, I would like to extend also my thanks once Kazaki to have us here tonight for Mark organizing this event. It's really lovely to be here, and thank you to all of you for coming. It's really lovely, particularly on a brilliant summer day like today. And thank you very much, Helen, for kickstarting this event with your introduction and the connection between the Dulwich Picture Gallery and the Yoshida family. And I will take you further, the connection of the Yoshida family with Japanese printmaking, and also the 3 generations that we showcase in the exhibition at Dulwich. And it has been an absolute pleasure because I'm a specialist in Japanese woodblock prints, and it was nice of Helen and Jane to select me to collaborate with the gallery and to be part of this amazing project. We have to start with the fact that when Hiroshi in 1900 visited the Dulwich Picture Gallery, he was not yet a printmaker. He was a yoga artist, a painter in the Western style. He produced watercolors and also oils. And he was also not born Yoshida. He was born Ueda Hiroshi. He comes from Kurume on the southern island of Kyushu, and he became a pupil of Yoshida Kazaburo, who was a teacher in Western style painting. And the firstborn of the Yoshida family was a female, so they later married Yoshida Fujio. But because Fujio could not take over the workshop, the best pupil was adopted into the family, and that was Yoshida Hiroshi. That is why he changed his name from Ueda to Yoshida. But here you see an example of one of his watercolors. It was only at the age of 44, in 1920, when he met the print publisher Watanabe Shozaburo, who coined the term Shinhanga, new print movement. It is kind of a neo-ukiyo-e movement because he renewed, he revitalized the ukiyo-e print collaboration of the Edo period, of the 18th and 19th century. What is so crucial, of course, many of you will know that the production process of these prints, this collaborative effort of a publisher, an artist, the carver, and the printer. This is something that he wanted to revitalize at the beginning of the 20th century when, due to photography, lithography, and other techniques, this kind of collaborative quartet did not really exist anymore in Japan. And so he asked a variety of artists to collaborate with him. And so you see here Watanabe in the middle and his print workshop on either side. So he was the one who invited the likes of Yoshida Hiroshi, Kawasa Hasui, and others to design prints for his workshop. But unfortunately, in 1923, we had the Great Kanto earthquake that destroyed the premises of Watanabe's print workshop in Tokyo. And after that, Yoshida Hiroshi and his wife decided to leave Japan on another trip to the United States and Europe. And on his return, he decided, because he had realized in the United States how popular Japanese prints were, to establish his own print shop in Tokyo. So that happened after his return in autumn 1925. So these are the kind of prints that we associate with that new print movement. And we have Natori Shunsen, Ito Shunsei, Kawasa Hasui. These are the prominent masters that collaborated also with the publisher Watanabe Shozaburo. And you see here very much continuing the main themes that we encounter in ukiyo-e during the Edo period. We have actors, we have beauties, we have landscapes and cityscapes and nature scenes. What is also crucial when we are looking at the Shinhanga movement is the creative print movement that actually started slightly earlier. The initial print was already designed in 1907. But I've selected here 3 prints by a later creative print artist, Onshi Koshiro, who had a tremendous impact on the second generation of Yoshida print makers. And the creative print movement is kind of a dichotomy to the new print movement, because the initial idea is that the artist designs the print, carves, and also prints. So he is in charge of the whole production process. So that was the important difference to the new print movement. Having said that, within the Yoshida family and in other works and other artists we encounter that as well. Some of the Shinhanga print masters also carved and printed, and we also have creative print artists who collaborated with professional carvers and printers. But they are initially have these different ideas how prints should be produced. Many of you will know the paper that is being used for Japanese prints is mulberry paper, and the wood blocks that are being used is the wood from the mountain cherry tree. And as I said, it's a collaborative work. And Yoshida Hiroshi kind of continued that, but he also changed this collaborative system because he became publisher and artist in one person. This is really crucial to keep in mind when we look at his prints. He did engage, and in his workshop we have professional carvers and printers, but for example, Hiroshi produced 15 of his almost 260 woodblock prints that he produced from the age of 44. 15 of those he carved himself, and he was engaged with the print process many times more. I will go through this one example that we also have within the exhibition in Dulwich, called Kagorazaka After Night Rain. And within his prints, and also quite visible in this one here, you really sense that he used to be a watercolor artist. The subtleties, the kind of overprinting that he uses then to achieve these variations in colors and pigments is really extraordinary. So what he does produce, like the ukiyo-e artist as well, is of course a key block print that you see here on the right-hand side. And then I will briefly slip through the various slides here to show you how these are being built up, those prints. We have a key block that gives us the outline, and then with every color that you see in a print, we have a separate wood block carved. Sometimes similar colors are added on the same wood block, but generally there is a separate wood block, and thanks to registration marks that were already invented in 1765, it is possible with these registration marks that are carved into each of those blocks to slot in those papers perfectly so they fit into the design and align perfectly. So you see how this whole image here is being built up step by step, adding a different color or overprinting. In ukiyo-e you have here and there overprinting maybe 20 or so or 20 wood blocks. Hiroshi had sometimes up to 50, or quite frequently actually, and one of his most complex prints of the Yomemon in Nikko actually had 100 steps of overprinting. So you see he had really a very unique vision to produce these sites and designs that he produced. And yeah, the last step was there in the bottom right corner. You see the seal of Hiroshi. So, despite the fact that these are so complex to produce, they were hugely popular. I mean, there is a shift now from the Edo period ukiyo-e, who were really commercial prints, were produced in the thousands. Here, Yoshida prints were produced in the hundreds and in the thousands. But what we really, as Helen already mentioned, we really wanted with this exhibition to focus on the family aspect of these three generations of printmakers that you see here. So the first generation is exhibited with Hiroshi and his wife Fujio. The second generation, then their sons, the first one, Santoshi, and his younger brother, Hodaka, and Hodaka's wife, Shizuko, who was also, before she met Hodaka, a very famous and successful artist in her own right. And then in the final room, we focus on the site-specific installation of the current generation master, Yoshida Ayumi. And I would like to invite you now, with a succession of slides, some highlights from the exhibition. I would like to start, of course, with the first generation artist, the patriarch of the Yoshida lineage, and start with some of the prints that he produced then in his own workshop after returning from that trip to the United States and Europe in 1925 after opening his own workshop. And you already see here, these are two of the most iconic scenes from these two series that he produced. On the left-hand side, El Capitan from the United States series, and the Acropolis here on the right-hand side from his Europe series. What is really crucial to keep in mind, and it's a signifier that on one hand he was very much involved with the whole production process, is the insertion of the kanji, the characters, usually on the left-hand margin, often printed in red, the term jizuri, which means self-printed. It does not mean that he always really self-printed his works. It does mean his close involvement and close engagement with those carvers and printers in his workshop. This was really crucial to him, to really have those visions perfectly visualized in those prints. Another very important factor is that sets him apart from other Shinhanga masters at the time is that, and this is very much so showcasing that he catered his work to a Western audience. He gave his prints English titles, like this one here on his brochure, and also he switched his name round to a Western mode, Hiroshi Yoshida. And next to having Kawase Hasui as one of the dominant Shinhanga landscape artists, who's usually considered as the Hiroshige of the 20th century. What is so unique with Hiroshi's prints, because he traveled so much, he also shows foreign scenes, not just Japanese scenes as his contemporaries did. So this is also something that sets him apart from other print masters at the time. Something that we also discover again and again in his work is capturing one side, like the Sphinx here, or Ikoigawa, a domestic scene, at different times of the day. This was really something that fascinated him. We often have morning and evening views of a certain famous site, Meisho, in Japanese. That was something that really fascinated him, and experts sort of are divided where this inspiration came from. Of course, one inspiration must have been most certainly the predecessors of the Edo period, Hokusai and Hiroshige, who also produced these kind of views many times, like Hokusai's 36 views of Mount Fuji is produced during different times of the day or different weather conditions. But other people think because he traveled so much and went to many galleries in the United States and also in Europe, Monet's haystacks, for example, objects like that, works like that, that most certainly also had an impact and in the vision and the designs that he produced. Something that connects with the beautiful exhibition downstairs relating to seasons, seasonality. When you're looking across Japanese art, whether it's painting or prints, it is of course the connection to certain flowers, certain shrubs that stand for a season. And here also the connection with previous masters here, like Hiroshige from his 100 famous views of Edo, the Kameiyo Shrine that Hiroshi then also depicts here in his 12 Scenes of Tokyo from 1927. This is one piece I really need to focus on, and this is the last example of Hiroshi that I would like to discuss. It is on the central wall of the first room in the gallery. There are 3 huge prints you see here. Usually they are sort of slightly larger than A4, the usual Oban format. Here he used 3 wood blocks to create these massive prints. These are the largest prints that were produced at the time, and I've walked past these many, many times, and they are so perfectly aligned and so perfectly printed. How he achieved that with his carvers and printers, it still amazes me. The reason why I would like to discuss this print here on the right-hand side is one fascinating aspect that we encounter within his work is that they are often based on designs that he had already produced as watercolors or as oils. So you see here his original painting on the right-hand side, 1899, that was purchased by the Detroit Institute of Arts, served as inspiration for the woodblock print that he created then, Kumoi Cherry Trees, in 1926. These are daughters from a friend who's a poet. He changed the design slightly, but the reason, I mean, we are here showcasing Hanami cherry blossom viewing. This print on the right, on the left-hand side, served as inspiration for the site-specific installation by Ayomi that I will discuss at the end. As I said, he married his sister, and she was, of course, being the daughter of an art teacher and an artist. From an early age on, she sketched, she was introduced to arts, and also from an early age onwards, she was also creating works in watercolor, in oil, in a Renaissance-style manner. She, like Hiroshi, for a time also went to Kyoto to study under one of the leading artists, Koyama Shotaro, but then both of them settled in Tokyo. And on their trips before they married to the United States, she also sketched and also sold their work. So one of the reasons why in 1900 Hiroshi and his fellow artist Nakagawa Hachiro went on to Dulwich, to England and further afield in Europe, was because they exhibited their paintings, sold them, and made enough money so they could actually travel further. And this is something that Hiroshi and Fujio did as well. They had many exhibitions across the United States, sold their work, and then traveled further. So they both came to London in 1925. Interestingly enough, I have been asked this a few times, why aren't there any prints of London signs or English signs? I still haven't quite established that. I can imagine that maybe because they were quite active selling and exhibiting in the United States, they just maybe wanted to have some downtime. They did certainly sketch. We have some lovely watercolors by Fujio of Warwick Castle, of Windsor Castle, Stratford-upon-Avon, but funnily enough, we don't have any print designs by Hiroshi on English sites. So, but it is just fascinating to see, and this is another cornerstone and an important part of the exhibition, the prominence and of female artists within one family, and this is really very unique. And so she produced these watercolors. We have 6 of her 15 woodblock prints that she designed in her life. Hiroshi died in 1950, and it was in particular then from the time that his sons, but also Fujio, ventured into abstract art. Hiroshi was not a fan of abstract art. He discouraged members of the family to work in abstract art. But particularly after his death, and these close-up images of flowers are also based on oils that Fujio had produced previously. And she produced these by inserting flowers into fish bowls or put them behind fish bowls to get this magnifying effect. And there are really there is sort of a sense of light there. She always played sort of with the impact of sunlight, but you feel sort of a human presence there, and they are very sensual, those close-up views of flowers that she produced. Let's move on to the second generation, and in the second room we have combined Fujio and the firstborn son, Toshi. So after the death of Hiroshi in 1950, of course, as a firstborn, he was the one who took over the Yoshida print studio in Tokyo. And there was still quite a strong impact from the war, so he was really focusing on reviving kind of the finances of the print studio, and at first reprinted quite a lot of the designs that his father had created. And at the beginning, sort of the type of images that Toshi designed are quite close to the ones his father produced. So in the same kind of manner, producing a series like this one here as part of a series relating to sites in Tokyo, these are pre-war scenes in Tokyo. And so they are very subtle in colors, but also putting his own stamp on scenes of these cityscapes, playing also with the impact of light, for example, quite beautifully. He was most definitely also inspired by his father's work that we can see here, in the magnificent depiction of Himeji Castle. We have both those prints in the exhibition. It shows Hiroshi's version in a vertical way on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side you see Toshi's design. Not simply copying his father, he creates a horizontal view of this magnificent UNESCO site, and also a slightly different angle here that we are introduced to. I did mention that the key block is crucial in Japanese woodblock prints, particularly when printed in black. Here he experimented, and we can already sense there is a shift in his oeuvre. Quite minimal here, the depiction of dry landscape garden of famous Zen temples in Kyoto. Instead of having a black outline, we have a white outline, so there is actually no outline really. So it is really creating this very light and very minimal sense within these gardens, but was certainly also inspired by some of the garden views that we encounter in his father's work. But in particular, the impact of his brother Udaka, who right from the start worked in an abstract way. We see that in Toshi's work as well. There are a couple of really beautiful examples also downstairs of these rocks, these monoliths, these mountains that he encountered also on his travels to the United States. And he creates, like in Unknown or Frontier, he creates these views of these very minimal rocks that he was fascinated by. And he always compared these with the skyscrapers of Tokyo, really. But then towards the end of his life, you see here a view of Monument Valley from 1971. He actually reverts again to a more natural style. And he actually took an Airstream trailer with his family from the east of the United States all the way to the west, and they visited the Monument Valley and also Santa Fe. And we have here fairly towards the end of his life also a scene here of San Francisco, but particularly Santa Fe. I mean, the colors here, it's really very 70s all the visitors, all the tourists that gather here in front of this building. But in line with showcasing a more naturalistic style towards the end of his career is also this piece here. He visited Africa many times. He had been in the 1930s to India with his father, and these trips served towards the end of his life as inspiration, not just for prints. He also wrote a variety of children's books connected to Africa and African wildlife. Here, of course, it was picked up by one journalist. Of course, there are no tigers in Africa, but I think there is artistic license here. That's what he did. It is called camouflage, and I think tigers lend themselves better to camouflage than lions. So we have an amalgamation here of certainly an African scenery with tigers hiding in between those grasses. And this is the type of work that he became famous for in his later life. Let's move on to Hodaka, his brother. After a mountain in Japan, Mount Hodaka, that his father created there in the top left. I didn't mention that at the beginning. Hiroshi was a very keen mountaineer and produced many works and series of mountains around Japan. And Hodaka, as I said, his second old son, was named after him. And here is a work already, a profile of a warrior, where you sense the complete departure, and this is something that we showcase in the third room, this complete renewal of the Yoshida idiom, innovation that we encountered with Hodaka and also his wife, Chizuko. These are the kind of works that he produced. He also did some oil paintings, and he even entered one of those oil paintings at an exhibition, and his father was one of the jurors, and the piece won the prize. And of course, he was shocked to realize that it was his son that created the created abstract work, because, as I said, Hiroshi really despised abstract art. So he did not encourage it at all, and he didn't even encourage Hodaka to become an artist. As the firstborn Toshi had already taken over the studio, he wanted Hodaka to become a scientist. He studied science for a bit, but yeah, being surrounded by artists, by craftsmen in the workshop, this is what he, of course, then took up as well and ran into. And Hodaka and Chizuko got married in 1953, and their honeymoon was to Nara and Kyoto. And many of you will have been to those temples there. And he was inspired by all these Buddhist sculptures in those temples, and he created here the piece on the right-hand side, Kunen Buddhist figures. But also works and an even stronger departure, maybe inspired. For me, Kandinsky always comes into mind. Of course, like his brother, like his father and mother, also Hodaka, together with his wife, they traveled all over the world. He was a big fan of Mexico, for example, but also other places around the world where he also, the whole family, gave workshops on printmaking, particularly in the United States, and that is one of the reasons why they have been very famous in Japan and very famous in the United States. But this is the first exhibition on this family in Europe, in the UK. So it's really quite interesting that it took a long time to have this show on. This is the type of work that he produced as well. It is not just then experimenting with a different setup of a workshop. We also encounter then experimentation with different kind of printing techniques. We have screen printing, we have photo engraving and etching, combined with woodblock color printing. So this is really fascinating to see, and of course in the piece there, Nonsense Mythology on the left-hand side, most definitely inspired by pop art. He had visited New York many times, had also seen various exhibitions there, certainly took this as an inspiration. Or what he also commented, he was a fantastic photographer. And he produced collages, cutouts from magazines or his own photographs. So the houses that you see here on the right-hand side are houses that he had photographed in Mexico. The ladies at the front from magazines. And here's also a kind of, a little bit of a surrealist moment here that he captures the meaning behind it. And a lot of these images where he deals with Western scenes and culture have the term entitled mythology included. Maybe it was something of a mysterium to him, that sort of the Western culture that he experienced on his travels. But there is certainly also a reference here to traditional printmaking, because the gradation that you see there at the top that replicates the sky, bokashi, this is something that Okusai Hiroshi, his own Edo period print masters, also experimented and worked with. Let's move on to his wife, Chizuko. She was born in Yokohama in 1924, and she originally wanted to become a dancer. Unfortunately, she had an accident, so she couldn't pursue this career. But most definitely, we see the impact and interest in dance, but also music. She always listened to music when she created works, and even before she married Hodaka in 1953, they had already exhibited together at various galleries in Tokyo. And it's particularly here this piece that's also in the exhibition, Wave. Yeah, the musical notes, they're almost dancing across the picture here. So there is certainly this interest or the impact of the music that she was listening to. And I just love this image there of her so fashionable in her twin set, smoking, sitting there on the floor of her workshop, surrounded by her designs. She was really one of the forces in Japanese printmaking. I didn't mention that early on with Fujio. She was a leading figure of creating the Shoyokai, the Vermilion Leaf Society that still exists today, supporting female artists in Japan. Her daughter-in-law, Chizuko, she's a founder of the Female Printmakers Society. With 9 other printmakers for 10 years, she was a driving force of female printmakers in Japan. And so, next to producing their own work, they also collaborated with contemporaries and really pushed female artists in Japan and internationally. But we most certainly see here in this piece, Tenryuji Garden, also a reference in particular to her brother-in-law Toshi, and also the one that I showed you earlier on. It's a common theme. We have the seasonality, the depiction of nature that is so quintessential and so typical within Japanese art in general. But the sense of the importance of music is most definitely visible there in her piece, Jazz, on the left-hand side. The swirling, on the right-hand side it almost looks like a piano, but then the swirls, I don't know, 50 years ago the saxophone, or you sort of you almost feel that you were in a New York jazz bar or Tokyo jazz bar. It's sort of that whole movement there that she manages to recreate in her designs is absolutely fascinating to reproduce that movement of jazz. But as I said, Hodaka and Chizuko, they traveled a lot, and she often was inspired by water, by the sea, and she collected shells. And so we have a few series here, Reef Sea, where she recreates an amalgamation collections of shells. The last 2 pieces that I would like to introduce to you are these. In particular here, the one on the right-hand side first, even though it's later, because this is really crucial to point out, thanks to our to the colleagues from the British Museum, that we are able to show this in the exhibition. This is part of a series, 100 Views of Tokyo, Message to the 21st Century. And this was a series that the Japan Print Association initiated and invited 100 contemporary print designers, print artists to contribute to this series. And so they invited Shizuku to produce this scene of, she decided to create the scene of Shinjuku, the view from the Metropolitan Office of the Tocho, and it has this really beautiful observation floor where you can look across the suburbs, and she often would go there to the observatory together with Hodaka. And this is the year Hodaka passed away, and it just shows her importance within Japanese printmaking to be included in this series here in 1995. The final print that I would like to point out is the one on the left-hand side, which brings me to the final generation, Ayumi, because this is called something within me, internal, or in other collections it's also sometimes titled Anticipation. At the time, in 1961, she had two small children, Ayumi, the firstborn, and Tsukasa, her brother. And yeah, there is certainly the impact of avant-garde calligraphy that she tried to replicate here within this print, but also the swirls on the right-hand side, these orange swirls, could be Ayumi, a toddler, and maybe the reclining figure could be the baby, her brother, and combined there with the movement and reference to Japanese calligraphy. As I said, this is the perfect way to guide you to the final room of the exhibition that showcases the third and final generation of the Yoshida family with the current master Yoshida Ayumi. And you will see here she is also a print maker. Her initial interest was in architecture, that's why I think it is quite natural probably that she moved on from simply producing prints to installations with that interest in architecture. And this print here of Kandagawa in Kashira is also part of that series that the Mimahanga Kyokai initiated. The same her mother was part of. So she is very much part of this whole legacy of Japanese printmakers and not just the Yoshida family. And Helen referred to this moment at the beginning. On the right-hand side of the photograph, this was when Yoshida Ayumi came to the Dulwich Picture Gallery last year, when I met her for the first time. And this is the moment when she looked at the signature of her grandfather. He died in 1950, Ayumi was born in 1958, so as Helen said, they never met. And we were all in tears because she touched the signature, and it was a very moving moment. The photograph that you see there on the left-hand side, this was on the evening last month, the 18th of June, when we opened the Yoshida exhibition. We invited her to also provide a signature of herself, by herself. And this will be archived together with Hiroshi's signature at Dulwich. So I think this was a really nice moment to kind of come full circle for the Yoshida and their connection with Dulwich. So this is an image, a panoramic image of the installation that she designed for the exhibition. It's called Transient Beauty. As I said, it has connection with the print Kumoi Cherry Trees by Hiroshi. This most certainly served as an inspiration, but also when she was there last year in June, she learned that in Dulwich Village and Fernhill, there are actually so-called Yoshino cherry trees planted in the area. So I did mention that at the beginning, Kumoi cherry trees is a scene that is showing the Yoshino trees east of Osaka, one of the main sites to go for Hanami, for cherry blossom viewing. And it has been famous for centuries, and there are also many poems that have been created about that site. So these two sites really inspired Ayumi to create this scene. So there is continuity, there is change that we encounter. We also have the aspect of seasonality here. She also wants to highlight the importance of this ritual, the tradition of cherry blossom. And she's also concerned that this might vanish at one point, and also wants to point out sort of the aspect that climate change does have an impact on when we are able to watch cherry blossoms in Japan. And it is really this amazing creation that she produced. On the right and left hand side we have kind of wallpapers, synthetic walls that she created with prints of a riverscape at the bottom, a cherry tree on the right hand side, and then also trees, and but particular rain and windy scenery on the left hand side. The back wall is created with 30 wood blocks, not the thick ones that we are used to from Hiroshi and older print masters, but these are produced from birch trees from Hokkaido, and they are very thin, so like plywood. But the whole scenery, this riverscape, the cherry trees, the rain continues on these 30 panels that she created there. So it's really a very immersive experience, and it's the first time in a long time I heard that the skylight of that room have been opened. So again, we have this aspect of changing weather conditions, changing daytimes that impact her work. And what else we really encounter there, and this is really fascinating, we have 10,000 hand-printed cherry blossom petals made from Gampi paper, very thin paper, that she and her team pasted on this wall in 2 weeks before the exhibition. This was really fascinating, and it completely changed the atmosphere of this room. And this is really kind of paying homage to her grandfather, but also connecting to continuous themes of impermanence and seasonality that Japanese art and Japanese printmaking is so famous for. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.